Something happened behind palace doors that no one was supposed to witness, a sudden decision, delivered with absolute authority, that instantly changed the royal calendar. Insiders claim it wasn't Charles who made the first move, it was Catherine. And the target wasn't just a tour, it was Camilla's visibility, her power, her momentum. A health warning was cited, but the whispers say the real warning wasn't medical at all. It was political. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It hit like a shockwave, because royal schedules don't change like that. Not at the last minute. Not without layers of approvals, rehearsed explanations, and carefully staged reassurance. Yet suddenly, the tour planned, promoted, and positioned as a show of strength was thrown into uncertainty. The palace didn't just adjust the plan, it pivoted. Fast. And when the monarchy pivots that quickly, people don't assume routine. They assume panic. They assume someone saw something they couldn't ignore, something big enough to override pride, optics, and the need to appear unshakable. Insiders describe a frantic energy that spread through the palace like electricity. Staff scrambling, phones lighting up, briefings rewritten in a hurry, then rewritten again, each new version trying to sound calmer than the last. But calm is hard to manufacture when the decision itself feels like an emergency. Within hours, fragments began leaking tiny contradictions that didn't match the official tone. One camp insisted it was simply precaution. Another hinted it was a non-negotiable warning. And the more the palace tried to speak in polished, neutral language, the more the world heard the tremor underneath. Something had forced their hand. What made it explosive wasn't only the cancellation, it was the whisper about who pushed it through. Catherine, the woman usually associated with composure, restraint, quiet endurance, not the one who storms into strategy meetings and reshapes royal calendars. And yet, that's exactly what the rumor claimed, that Catherine didn't merely advise caution, she demanded action. That she didn't ask Charles to reconsider, she made it impossible for him to proceed without consequence. In the palace world, that kind of pressure doesn't come from emotion. It comes from information. And that's why the question isn't whether she had influence. The question is what she had in her hands that made influence feel like authority. The health warning was the official shield, the phrase meant to soften the public's suspicion. It sounded responsible, humane, sensible. But insiders say the way it was handled didn't feel like ordinary concern. It felt like containment, like they were trying to stop something from becoming visible, not just protect someone from exhaustion. Because when a palace truly believes a health issue is manageable, it manages it quietly. When it believes the issue could trigger scandal, chaos, or a collapse of public trust, it changes the script entirely. And that's where the whispers sharpened. The real warning wasn't about Camilla's body. It was about Camilla's position. Camilla's team, according to those close to the situation, didn't react like people who had been part of the decision. They reacted like people who had been informed after the fact. Shock. Confusion. A sudden tightening of the circle around her. Because a tour isn't just travel, it's visibility. It's legitimacy on display. It's proof that you are not being sidelined, not being diminished, not being quietly moved out of the spotlight. So when the palace pulled the plug, the message it sent was brutal, even if it was never spoken aloud. Someone believed Camilla's presence was now a risk. And that's where the private confrontation rumor begins to haunt everything. Insiders claim Catherine and Charles had words, quiet words, but sharp ones, the kind delivered with calm intensity rather than loud anger. Catherine wasn't allegedly pleading. She was reportedly presenting a reality Charles couldn't deny. Proceed with the tour and invite a storm the monarchy may not survive. Or cancel it and accept the outrage that will follow. Either way, damage. But only one path offered control. Only one path gave the palace the chance to steer the narrative before it spun out of their hands. Charles in that telling didn't look like a king making a confident choice. He looked like a man being cornered by consequences. Because if Catherine was truly the one pushing this, then the monarchy wasn't just dealing with a health scare, it was dealing with an internal power shift. A future queen stepping into the machinery of the crown and forcing it to move. That's why the cancellation felt so ominous. It wasn't just a schedule change, it was a warning shot. And the cliffhanger hanging in the air is the one nobody inside the palace wants to answer out loud. What did Catherine see or learn that made her act so decisively something urgent enough to risk crossing a king, and powerful enough to stop Camilla's momentum in its tracks? But to understand why Catherine would risk crossing a king, we have to rewind to the warning that quietly arrived before the cancellation. The palace called it precautionary. The public heard rest. But insiders heard something else. Alarm. Because the warning wasn't handled like a routine issue, it was treated like a threat with consequences. Meetings tightened. Access narrowed, words became coded, and Catherine, usually calm under pressure, reportedly went cold with focus, like she'd been handed information that could turn a royal tour into a national scandal overnight. On the surface, the medical angle sounded straightforward: fatigue, strain, a need to slow down, the kind of explanation that protects privacy while satisfying the public's demand for clarity. But the historian-style whispers from inside the palace describe something far more complicated. The warning arrived wrapped in urgency, delivered in a way that instantly changed how people spoke, moved, and looked at one another. It wasn't treated like a normal health update. It was treated like a risk assessment, like a problem that could multiply if it was mishandled for even a day. That's why the secrecy tightened so suddenly. Briefings were limited to fewer voices, and the usual wide circle of advisors allegedly narrowed to a small, tense group that could be trusted not to panic or leak. Schedules that had been public-facing and confident became locked, then reviewed, then quietly rewritten behind the scenes. Even language became coded. Not health, not concern. Words like exposure, pressure, visibility, and timing began to replace the softer phrases, hinting at a fear that went beyond medical well-being. It felt less like compassion and more like containment. And then comes the detail that makes this story feel paranoid, but also painfully believable. Catherine didn't reportedly receive the warning through the normal public relations chain. It didn't filter politely through aides and official messaging. The claim is that it came through an unusual channel, someone close enough to the situation that they bypassed ceremony. A doctor with direct access. A security figure whose job is to anticipate risk, not soothe nerves. An aide who saw something and understood immediately that routine was no longer the right word. Whatever the source, the impact was the same. Catherine wasn't given a comforting summary. She was given something that demanded action. Because the deeper, unnamed risk wasn't just, can Camilla travel? It was, what happens if Camilla is seen under strain, at the wrong moment, in the wrong spotlight? In the modern monarchy, perception can be lethal. A single unsteady appearance can become a viral clip, a trending narrative, a national argument about capability and suitability. Insiders suggest the warning carried reputational and safety concerns, less about diagnosis, more about how the tour could spiral into a spectacle the palace couldn't control. And once that possibility enters the room, every decision becomes a calculation between dignity and damage. That's where the internal debate reportedly turned sharp. Some voices pushed to proceed, arguing that cancellation would look like weakness, that stopping the tour would validate rumors and hand the public a story far more dangerous than rest. They believed optics could be managed with careful staging, shorter engagements, controlled statements. But others, those who think like crisis planners, saw the opposite. They believed proceeding would gamble with the monarchy's credibility, especially if the warning was tied to Camilla's recent strain and how the public had already begun reading into her appearances. In that context, the tour wasn't just an itinerary, it was a test. And tests can fail in public. Catherine, according to insiders, didn't react with emotion. She reacted with focus. A colder, more strategic calm that tends to appear when someone realizes they're not looking at a minor problem, they're looking at a potential rupture. She reportedly listened, absorbed the competing arguments, and then did the thing that shocked everyone. She prepared a move before anyone could dilute the urgency. No waiting for consensus. No extended back and forth, because once the palace starts debating, it starts stalling. And stalling in a crisis is how you lose control. The most ominous part is that Catherine didn't allegedly ask permission in the way royal women are expected to. She didn't float the idea gently and wait to be guided. She prepared her case like a verdict waiting to be delivered, as if she understood that the monarchy's survival depends on someone being willing to act before the storm becomes visible. And by the time Charles was fully aware of the intensity behind that precautionary warning, Catherine wasn't coming to negotiate, she was coming to draw a line. And when Catherine finally confronted Charles, it wasn't a discussion, it was a deadline. People expect royal conflict to be polite, quiet, buried under ceremony. But this insider's claim was different. Catherine allegedly walked into a meeting that wasn't meant for her, and she didn't come with suggestions. She came with certainty. She spoke about risk, responsibility, and consequences in a way that reportedly stunned Charles's advisors, because it sounded less like a princess and more like a future queen drawing a line no one was allowed to cross. The room, according to those who later whispered about it, was already leaning toward the familiar palace instinct: keep calm, proceed, and let the optics do the work. That strategy has saved them before smile through storms, move the cameras, keep the machine running. It's the approach of people who believe that if you don't flinch, the public will eventually stop watching. But Catherine, insiders claim, challenged it with a calm so sharp it cut. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't dramatize, she simply refused to treat the warning like a minor inconvenience. In that moment, she reportedly made one thing clear: proceeding wasn't bravery. It was recklessness. Advisors pushed back immediately, and not gently. Some called it overreach, an emotional reaction dressed up as concern. Others implied she didn't have the authority to reshape a king's schedule or a queen's visibility. And that's where the tension turned electric, because Catherine allegedly didn't retreat. She countered with urgency and logic, the kind that makes resistance look childish. She spoke about consequences that couldn't be cleaned up later, about how modern audiences don't forgive staged confidence when something goes wrong in real time, about how a single moment can become a permanent image, and a permanent image can become a permanent doubt. The advisors wanted to manage perception, Catherine wanted to prevent disaster. But what made her argument so unsettling wasn't just strategy, it was the emotional undercurrent she carried without letting it spill. She framed this as protection, not attack, not a strike against Camilla, not a humiliation of Charles. Protection of the institution, protection of public trust, protection of the fragile thread holding the monarchy together in an era where patience is thin and suspicion spreads like wildfire. Insiders claim she made it personal in the most controlled way, by suggesting the monarchy could survive controversy, but it might not survive another moment that makes it look unstable, out of control, or unwilling to face reality. And that is a terrifying accusation to place on the table, because it implies that proceeding isn't just risky, it's irresponsible. Charles, they say, sat trapped between two unbearable truths: loyalty to Camilla on one side, stability of the monarchy on the other. Because stopping the tour would look like surrender, like fear, like an admission that the palace was hiding something. But continuing could risk something worse, a public crisis that becomes irreversible. The cruelest part of leadership is being forced to choose which damage you can live with. And in that moment, Catherine wasn't just confronting the advisors. She was confronting Charles with the reality that his reign would be judged by what he protected: first, people or institution. Then Catherine allegedly sharpened the warning. She hinted that the health issue was only part of the danger. That what made this combustible wasn't merely physical well-being, it was the environment around it. The rumors already moving, the public tension already rising, the way the media would interpret every moment, the possibility that proceeding would invite speculation so wild it would swallow the official narrative whole. She didn't need to say every detail. The way she spoke, insiders claim, made everyone understand she had seen something or been told something that changed her sense of urgency. Something that made delay feel like failure. And that's when the meeting reportedly stopped being a debate and became a moment of power. Catherine demanded a decision today. Not next week. Not after another round of polished messaging. Today, the kind of demand that doesn't just press for action, it exposes fear. Because if the palace hesitates, it signals uncertainty. And uncertainty in a monarchy is blood in the water. The advisors tried to slow it down, to reshape it into a discussion. Catherine allegedly held her ground, forcing them to confront the cost of doing nothing. The silence that followed, insiders suggest, wasn't agreement. It was calculation. Charles weighing the backlash, the humiliation, the internal fallout, the damage to Camilla, the damage to himself, and the damage to the crown. And then he gave in, not because it was easy, but because the alternative looked worse. Yet the cliffhanger hangs in the air for a reason. Charles agreed, but not without a price. A private condition. A future promise, a debt Catherine would eventually be forced to pay back in the only currency the palace truly values: control. The cancellation came fast, and the speed of it made the palace look guilty. One moment, the tour was happening. The next, it was gone, erased with a statement so carefully worded it sounded like it had been rewritten 100 times. The public was told it was about health. But the timing, the secrecy, and the visible tension between royal camps sparked a different story. Catherine didn't just recommend cancellation, she forced it. And when a royal tour disappears overnight, people assume the truth is worse than the explanation. The official wording was smooth, almost too smooth, vague enough to protect, polished enough to calm, and yet empty enough to ignite suspicion. Precautionary. Rest, adjusted engagements. Phrases like velvet curtains pulled across a stage after something went wrong behind it. And the public heard what the palace didn't want them to hear: panic. Not because a tour was cancelled, but because it vanished with the speed of a crisis response, as if someone had slammed a door to stop a fire from spreading. If everything was truly fine, why did it feel like they were running? Within hours, the media framed it the only way modern audiences understand royal chaos: a power struggle. Not a health decision, not a humane pause, a battle. Headlines sharpened, commentary grew louder, and suddenly Catherine's name was being spoken like a command rather than a compliment. Social reaction followed the predictable arc: concern first, then speculation, then outrage, concern for Camilla's well-being, speculation about what wasn't being said, outrage at the secrecy that always seems to hover around royal decisions like fog. The palace had hoped for sympathy. Instead, it created a vacuum, and a vacuum always gets filled. And into that vacuum came leaks. Not full documents, not official confirmations, just sharp, contradictory fragments designed to land like darts. Catherine insisted. Charles resisted. Camilla furious. One source painted Catherine as the responsible protector of the monarchy's image, the woman willing to make hard calls when others hesitated. Another painted her as an overreaching force, pressing too hard, too fast, against someone who was already under strain. The contradictions were the point, because when the palace speaks with multiple voices, the public assumes the truth is being fought over, not managed. Inside the walls, staff were reportedly split, and it showed in the briefings. One camp emphasized health and privacy. Another hinted at scheduling complications and external pressures. A third sounded defensive, as if reacting to a story they hadn't expected the public to build. That division is where royal crises become dangerous because it means the institution isn't simply communicating, it's arguing. And arguments in the palace rarely stay private for long. People with loyalties began placing their versions of events into the world, not to inform, but to shape perception before someone else shaped it first. Camilla's allies pushed back almost immediately, suggesting quietly, strategically, that she was being unfairly targeted, that the health framing was being used in a way that could damage her standing, because to be described as unwell in royal terms isn't always compassionate. Sometimes it's political. It becomes a label that justifies sidelining, shrinking visibility, reducing relevance, and the cruel reality is this: a tour isn't just travel. It's proof of position, proof of momentum, proof that you are still central. When that proof is taken away, you are left with only rumor and interpretation, and rumor is never kind. That's why insiders say Camilla didn't just feel cancelled, she felt cut off. She held her composure publicly, because she has survived storms by staying still, letting time do what arguments can't. But privately, this storm felt different. More personal. More surgical. The cancellation didn't merely pause a schedule, it threatened control of her position, the one thing she can't afford to lose now. And when control is threatened, stillness stops being survival and starts being surrender. Her emotional reaction, according to those close to her, was framed as betrayal either by Charles, who allowed it to happen, or by the institution that would rather protect its image than protect her dignity. Her inner circle allegedly saw Catherine's move as a power play disguised as responsibility, a demonstration of who can pull the emergency brake when it matters. And the rumors intensified, a tense exchange with Charles after the announcement, words sharper than usual, a painful demand for reassurance that couldn't be given without admitting there was something to reassure. Camilla's deepest fear wasn't criticism, it was being reframed. Because once the public begins to see you as unwell, it becomes easier for others to push you out of sight for your own good. It becomes easier to reduce your role, soften your presence, quietly shift the spotlight back toward the future. And that's where the foreshadowing turns darker. Insiders claim Camilla began preparing a counter-move, not loud, not reckless, but subtle and effective. The kind of move that doesn't look like revenge until it's already done. The kind that restores power without asking permission. Then came the cliffhanger that made palace watchers hold their breath. A private message allegedly reached Camilla after the announcement, something brief, direct, and loaded with implication. And if insiders are right, it wasn't comforting. It was clarifying. It confirmed what Camilla feared most, and it ignited the most personal fallout of all. But the real pressure hit Charles next, because now he had to choose which woman the crown would protect. A king can survive headlines. What he can't survive is a split inside his own house. After the cancellation, insiders say Charles looked like a man trapped between two versions of the monarchy, the one he built with Camilla and the one the public trusts through Catherine. And the cruel reality is, this protecting one may destroy the other. The health warning may have been the excuse, but the decision became a referendum on Charles's reign. Because in the monarchy, perception doesn't just shape popularity, it shapes authority. And the perception forming around Charles was brutal. That he hadn't led, he'd been led. That he hadn't decided, he'd been forced. Insiders claim this humiliation hit him harder than the headlines, because it struck at the identity he spent a lifetime trying to prove strong, stable, in control. A king can tolerate gossip. What he can't tolerate is the suggestion that his household is being run by competing centers of power, each pulling the crown in a different direction. Advisors reportedly warned him in cold, urgent terms, if the conflict looks public, the damage becomes permanent. Not because people will be shocked by family tension, people expect that, but because the monarchy's modern fragility leaves no room for visible fracture at the top. Public tolerance is thin, trust is limited, And once the public senses chaos, it starts asking questions the palace can't answer without exposing more weakness. Charles was told, insiders say, that the story must be contained before it becomes the story of his reign, a king split between his queen and his future queen. Catherine, in contrast, framed her position as survival. Not personal victory, not rivalry, survival. She allegedly argued that long-term trust matters more than short-term pride, that the monarchy must look responsible even if it looks uncomfortable. Because if something went wrong during the tour, one misstep, one moment misinterpreted, one image the public couldn't unsee, it wouldn't just harm Camilla. It would harm the institution and the future. And in that argument, Catherine wasn't presenting herself as the aggressor, she was presenting herself as the firewall. Camilla, meanwhile, demanded reassurance and the restoration of visibility, because visibility in royal terms is legitimacy. Insiders claim she didn't want sympathy, she wanted her position reaffirmed. Not quietly, not privately, publicly. Because to be sidelined under the label of health can become a permanent downgrade if it's allowed to harden into narrative. And that put Charles in the most cruel position imaginable. Protect Camilla by pushing her back into the spotlight, or protect the monarchy by keeping her out of it until the storm passes. Either move would be interpreted as betrayal by someone he couldn't afford to lose. So the whispers say Charles started considering a compromise, one that sounded diplomatic on paper but satisfied no one in reality. A partial reschedule, a reframed tour, a smaller appearance plan that restored Camilla's presence without fully reopening the risk. The kind of middle path monarchs choose when every option feels like poison. But middle paths can create their own disasters, because they look like hesitation. And hesitation is the one thing both the public and the palace punish. To Camilla, compromise could feel like diminishing. To Catherine, it could feel like gambling again. To the public, it could feel like deception with nicer words. And then, just as Charles tried to regain control, the crisis mutated into something darker, because a royal crisis goes public only when someone benefits. That's the palace rule nobody admits aloud. And as insiders traded blame, one theory rose like smoke through the corridors. The health warning story had been weaponized. Not necessarily invented, but used. Used to justify cancellation, used to shift power, used to control Camilla's future, and used to make Charles look cornered enough to accept it. Possible leak sources multiplied like enemies in a mirror. Was it Camilla's camp, leaking in anger to frame Catherine as the villain? Was it Catherine's camp, leaking to position her as the responsible protector of stability? Was it advisors fighting their own civil war, using the press as leverage? Or was it staff people who see everything, resent everything, and sometimes release chaos because they believe truth should win? Each theory had motive. Protect the monarchy, secure the succession narrative, humiliate a rival, force an outcome before the palace can retreat into silence. And the most terrifying possibility was the one no one wanted to say, that the palace itself was leaking on purpose, allowing controlled damage now to prevent uncontrolled collapse later. Public perception became a battlefield overnight: sympathy versus suspicion, compassion versus conspiracy. Catherine was framed as a savior by some, the only one brave enough to stop a looming disaster. By others, she was framed as ruthless, ambitious, too powerful too soon. Camilla's team, insiders hinted, began to suggest they had receipts, proof, messages, timelines, something that could shift blame onto someone else if the pressure didn't ease. And Charles, watching this spiral, reportedly ordered an internal clampdown, a tightening of access and information meant to stop the bleeding. But clampdowns don't calm people, they panic them. Because when the palace starts hunting for a leak, everyone starts asking the same question: what exactly are they trying to hide? Then came the cliffhanger that changed the temperature of the entire crisis: a second leak, sharper than the first, suggesting the warning may not have been purely medical. And in that instant, the palace stopped asking who's right, and started asking who started this. Because if the warning was weaponized, there may be a blueprint behind it, And the historian's darkest claim is that a sealed report exists, locked away, containing the detail that proves this wasn't chaos at all. It was strategy. But the most dangerous moment wasn't the leaks, it was the private conversation that followed. In the end, insiders say Catherine didn't win with anger, she won with inevitability. She allegedly framed the crisis as simple. Either the monarchy protects public trust now, or it bleeds credibility for years. And if Camilla's tour continued under a cloud of warning and rumour, the damage would be irreversible. That's why Catherine's move felt so shocking. It wasn't about Camilla's schedule. It was about controlling the monarchy's future before it slips out of their hands. Because in a monarchy, the most brutal power isn't loud power. It's the kind that makes everyone else realize there's no safe alternative. Catherine, insiders claim, didn't threaten. She didn't grandstand. She presented a timeline one where every hour of delay increased the risk, and every public step forward under the wrong conditions turned into a future headline that could never be erased. She allegedly spoke the language the palace fears most. Consequences. Not emotional consequences, but institutional ones. The kind that outlive apologies. The kind that stain the crown, not the person. Her argument, as those close to the situation describe it, was built on 3 pillars: stability, optics, and long-term legitimacy. Stability meant stopping the chaos before it could become visible. Optics meant refusing to feed a narrative that the palace is reckless or deceptive. And legitimacy, always the deepest issue, meant ensuring the public never sees the monarchy as a family that protects itself at the expense of truth. Catherine wasn't saying Camilla was the enemy. She was saying the moment was dangerous. And in a dangerous moment, the monarchy must look responsible even if it looks uncomfortable. Because once the public suspects the palace is hiding something, they don't wait for explanations. They invent their own. Charles, in this version of events, faced a moral cost that couldn't be softened with official statements. Sidelining Camilla, even temporarily, wasn't just a logistical decision. It was a wound, a personal humiliation, a message, however unintentionally delivered, that her presence could be postponed for the sake of survival. And that is a cruel truth for a husband and king to confront, that the crown he wears may demand sacrifices from the person beside him, regardless of love, loyalty, or years of shared endurance. The palace may call it precaution, but inside the marriage, it could feel like exile. And still, the alternative was worse. Proceeding with the tour under a cloud of warning and rumour risked turning a controlled public appearance into a public reckoning. It risked scenes no palace script could contain, rumours hardening into certainty, commentators demanding answers mid-crisis, and a wave of distrust that could roll forward into every future engagement. Catherine allegedly made Charles see it in stark terms. One path creates immediate pain, but preserves the institution. The other path protects pride today and destroys credibility tomorrow. And in a modern monarchy, tomorrow arrives fast. The risk of public division hovered over everything like a blade. If Charles stood firmly with Camilla and pushed forward, the palace could be accused of arrogance, of hiding, of gambling with public trust. If he pulled her back, even for health, he risked inflaming those who would interpret it as proof she was being sidelined, targeted, or quietly diminished. Either choice could fracture supporters into bitter camps, and the monarchy, already fragile, cannot survive long if the public begins to see it as a house divided against itself. Patience is thin now. Transparency demands are high. People no longer accept no comment as dignity. They interpret it as guilt. That's where the long-term consequence becomes impossible to ignore. An internal power shift toward Catherine. Not because she sought it, but because crisis rewards the person who can impose clarity. Insiders claim the palace began to treat Catherine differently after this, less like a figure of the future, and more like a force in the present. Because she didn't just react, she directed. She didn't just protect, she controlled. And once someone demonstrates that kind of authority under pressure, it changes how others move around them. It changes whose voice carries weight. It changes who gets informed first. It changes who becomes the unofficial center of gravity when the monarchy faces its next emergency. Then came the final twist that makes the entire story feel darker than anyone expected. Whispers that the health warning may be tied to a deeper secret. Not simply strain or fatigue, but something the palace couldn't publicly name without sparking a new, more dangerous narrative. Something connected to risk management, to timing, to a sealed report that certain advisors wanted locked away. If that's true, then the cancellation wasn't only about preventing an embarrassing moment. It was about preventing exposure to something bigger, something that could redefine public perception of Camilla's role and Charles's leadership in one brutal stroke. And Camilla, insiders hint, didn't leave this crisis empty-handed. Because if she felt cut off, if she felt publicly framed, if she felt the institution quietly shifting toward Catherine, then she wouldn't simply endure. She would respond. The foreshadowing here is chilling. Camilla is said to be preparing a countermove subtle, strategic, and devastating in its timing. Not a public war, but a quiet repositioning designed to secure her future permanently. And if she succeeds, it won't just shock the palace. It will force Charles into a decision even more painful than cancellation, choosing whether his reign belongs to the past he defended or the future he can't stop coming. And as the palace tries to return to normal, one truth remains: this story is far from over. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.